What's the best one to help software programming? So for coding, probably Claude Code, and Claude as a model is very good at code. Claude, you can use it inside Cursor, or you can use Claude Code, and it is the underlying model that's used inside of Lovable and some other vibe coding tools. I don't know what Bolt and Base 44 use, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's Claude. Claude right now is probably the best for coding. So yeah, I'd go for that for software programming. What do you think about Seed Dream 4? It's great. I was playing around with it over the weekend and it's a really good model. I think the Chinese models, I mean, they bubble up every once in a while because they keep beating the Western models. But then people go back to the Western models by default. I'd really like to see a Chinese model, whether it's a large language model like DeepSeek or an image model like Seedream, become just the de facto usage, just the one that we use. But we haven't seen that yet. Instead, these Chinese models pop up. We're like, oh, this is really good. Wow, it's better than ChatGPT. Wow, it's better than Midjourney. And then the popular interest dies down. I don't know if Seedream is going to be the one that kind of breaks through. I think it's going to be tricky now that Google have Nano Banana, because I think they're both very good. And most people will find it easier to access Nano Banana because you can now download Gemini. In fact, Gemini is the #1 app on the App Store right now for this reason. And it's just a bit easier to access, to get into than Seedream. But I think it's a very good model, extremely good. Andrew says, hey Kyle, how do you combat the point of when you go from excitement to roadblock when building? Oh, that's a good question. At the moment, I'm doing another live stream. I do it immediately after the news live stream where I am building a application in public. I'm using Lovable. I'm going to do the whole project on Lovable. I won't use Cursor for this one. Reason being, I want to show people that it's doable and that it is relatively easy to do and it doesn't require you to be a tech genius. So I'm using Lovable. So as you say, there's always that first excitement, especially when you've put in your first prompt and it builds something magic and it looks great and your ideas come into life and it truly is magical. Then you start to build in the back end authentication, like the stuff you need to make an application actually work, and you run into problems, you run into roadblocks, you run into issues. It's kind of part and parcel of it. There are a bunch of ways to deal with those roadblocks, and I think the more that you code, the more that you vibe code, you learn the different ways that you can deal with the problems. So when I started doing the live, so I'm on day 11. I'm now day 11 out of 30 of the live stream. But the day 2 and day 3, I basically ran into roadblocks. So I had 2 hours of live stream of me just like, bloody thing, come on, work. But it was useful because I got to talk about the different ways that you can punch your way through roadblocks. So the first one is the one that I recommend not doing, is just saying to the AI, do it better, do it again, fix it. It doesn't really work. I will sometimes let it try to self-fix, maximum 2 or 3 times. Beyond that, it's just going to be making spaghetti code. So I'd prefer to roll back. So unfortunately, you can't just say, do it again, but better. The next kind of level up is getting the console code from Inspector. So if you're in Chrome, you right click anywhere, you go to Inspector, then you click on console and you can see the actual error codes, what's actually going wrong. Copy all of that, paste it into Lovable or Cursor or whatever it is and say, hey, this is what's happening, please diagnose it. Sometimes that fixes it. Third is to do the same thing, but take that information out to Claude. So going over to the Claude chatbot and say, hey, this is what I'm building. This is where I'm stuck. Describe the problem, show screenshots, give it the error codes, give it the console from Chrome, etc. And then say to Claude, give me 3 potential diagnoses, give me 3 potential diagnoses and work out which is going to be the most likely and give me a fix. And then I take that information back into my vibe coding tool. So that's a nice way to get a little bit of distance, because the vibe coding tools would tend to just go straight into the fix. Whereas if you take it out to Claude, you can have a discussion back and forward. So that works really well. And then there's other fixes. Obviously, there's going in and checking the code yourself. That depends on having some coding proficiency. Asking other people to help, that requires money or requires some kind of tech partner. But there are ways to fix these things for sure, but it's kind of part of the process. I think the more you do vibe coding, or the more you do more you do coding and building, the more you realize how to structure projects and how to work through these blocks as well. And it just becomes part of the process, unfortunately. Be a bit boring if it just one-shotted everything. Good, but a bit boring. So I think, how do you go from excitement to roadblock? Or how do you combat it? Just push through. I'm very stubborn though. Like these live streams I'm doing, as I mentioned at the beginning of this live, YouTube has finally started to spike up. Like it's been going flat, bam. Because I've been told YouTube rewards consistency. So all the YouTubers I talk to, they say, no, you just have to keep going. You need to grind your way to 10,000 and it's going to be hard. It's going to be horrible. But then once you get to 10,000 subscribers, you can go shooting up. That requires basically months and months of doing work without any results. And thankfully, there's something about my brain which is okay with that. Just grinding against it. And it's the same with building. You're going to hit problems and you just have to keep going. One good thing is that most people don't. Most people bounce off, and that's good for us, people who do go ahead and push through. Is DeepSeek dangerous? No, I don't think so. In what sense? Because it's Chinese? No, DeepSeek, it depends what you're using it for. So a lot of people have used DeepSeek because it's open source. You can deploy it yourself, which means you deploy it on your own server or your own computer. So it's not connected to the Chinese servers. It's not connected to the Chinese government, if that's your concern. So you can do it locally, which is fantastic. Lots of the Chinese models, most of the Chinese models are open source, which is really cool. I've shot videos about why this is. It isn't purely out of the generosity of their hearts. It's a form of soft power, which is how China does diplomacy. By giving away really valuable stuff, getting people used to using those ecosystems is an incredibly powerful thing to do. Also, they'll have monetization later down the road, and lots of the Chinese AI companies, they have something called a golden share. So the government has a stake in those companies, which means the government is intertwined with their kind of financial and their future success, which in turn means that getting financial support is a lot easier. They don't need to compete tooth and nail like they do in Silicon Valley for cash, because the Chinese government can help. They have quite a lot of money, and unlike in the West, China very early on decided this is strategically important, and we're gonna put a lot of resources behind this, which is very different to in the UK, where they're like, we think AI is important, and that's why we're giving £1 million to such and such. China's, no, this is what we're doing now, and then they're just pouring billions into it. This is no longer a £1 million game. We're in the billions and trillions now. So I think, what was I talking about? Is DeepSeek dangerous? No, but I am biased. I speak Mandarin Chinese. I've lived in China, so don't trust me. I'm an enemy agent. Andrew, awesome. Thank you. Awesome. D4E, do you know what AI interviews are? Yeah. Do you know how AI job interviews? Yeah, I know a few people who've done AI job interviews, and they were quite upset to do them because it feels very dehumanizing. I've never done an AI job interview. I've never really done job interviews though, so I'm the wrong person to ask on this. I'm just trying to think who talks about AI and employment. There must be people. It's not really my wheelhouse. I generally talk about AI for the use of starting your own business and growing businesses, but there are definitely AI job interviews out there. I think it's a bit of a weird concept, honestly.